I take this as another sign of victory for us folks. There are people who are willing to try plant-based alternatives, but as it turns out, they tend not to be repeat customers. Shock of shocks. I take it as a victory because when you see the rather staggering number of people who've given that lifestyle a try, it turns out it's not selling. People don't want the product. But it shows also that we have a lot of work to do, because we here are in this business of combating anti-human propaganda. And that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about combating misanthropic propaganda. So let's just dive into our story here. From supermarketnews.com, a food industry news source, we get this headline: Plant-based alternatives show promise, but repeat purchases lag. FMI research explores who is buying in this category and why. Now, FMI research is an industry, a food industry, specifically a supermarket industry research firm. They provide data to food companies about products and market research and all that kind of thing. These kinds of organizations are essential to the food industry. They help them make money, and they help them figure out where things are going. And as is the case in pretty much every sector of society at the moment, there's a lot of activism in that organization as well. That's not surprising. In the food industry, we've seen a lot of activism towards getting people to stop eating meat, or to at least reduce the amount of meat they're eating. And they do it for what we're called around here the thermometer problem, part of the narrative that you are not permitted to question in any way whatsoever. So, of course, I would never deign to question the official narrative on the thermometer problem. But here, we see that a lot of people have accepted the narrative that it is, in fact, healthier to eat plant-based foods. Unfortunately, and that shows that we have a lot of work to do. The good news is, a lot of people aren't actually buying into it. So we have some data here. So from their data, we get this: 33% of consumers are trying to select nutritious and healthy food choices, quote unquote, a lot of the time, while 48% put in the effort some of the time. Combined, folks, that's like 81% of the time. Healthy choices. That's good. About 1 in 10 consumers classify themselves as vegan or vegetarian, while another 1 in 10 claim to be flexitarians. Wonder where they're getting this data from, by the way. Most people have never even heard the term flexitarian. And 42% of consumers put at least some effort into selecting plant-based food options. Now, I don't know what some effort means in this context. Is some effort meaning once a week they abstain from meat? Well, there are whole religious groups out there who abstain from eating meat once or twice a week. So I don't know what they mean here by this. And they never really go into it. But they do have a fascinating little bit of information further down in this article, where they tell us that, well, nobody really knows what the term plant-based actually means. Shock of shocks. So let's just take this little money quote here from the article. Quote, "The grocery industry is continuing to explore plant-based alternatives. However, understanding the landscape can be confusing according to new research from FMI, the Food Industry Association. While the growth of plant-based products continues to explode onto grocery store shelves, there is mixed acceptance among shoppers. There are many plant-based meat and dairy, milk, yogurts, cheeses, and dessert alternatives. And even poultry and seafood plant-based items are making an appearance. Gross. However, FMI reports that the term plant-based is not clearly defined, even in health and nutrition world. Of course it's not. Additionally, there is no regulatory definition for plant-based, although the Food and Drug Administration is in the process of developing guidance documents addressing the labeling of various plant-based products. The FDA is expected to publish draft guidance according to the labeling of plant-based alternatives to other animal-derived foods, including meat and poultry, by the end of 2023. That would be this year. In general, the concept is all about eating more foods from plants and less foods from animals, but not necessarily eliminating things like meat, poultry, seafood, eggs, dairy altogether." End quote. So the takeaway I get from that is plant-based means that almost anything you want. For example, by that definition, eating less meat but not eliminating it altogether, that could mean you're eating a more traditional Asian diet, right? I mean, think about this. Think of a lot of actual Asian dishes, not the stuff you would get at an Americanized restaurant, but you'll see lots of vegetables. You'll see a lot of like soy curds and other things like that. But they're still eating a fair amount of meat, a lot more than any plant-based advocate would actually ever call plant-based. And so What they mean here, I don't know. But only 10% of the population considers themselves vegan or vegetarian, and that is good news, but it's rather staggering that almost half of the population is willing to try plant-based foods, it looks like. Although, again, I think that number is also inflated in one way. If you've ever tried a plant-based food, they might be sticking you in that number. And we know this because, anecdotally, if you ever go to the meat section of any store, unless you live in San Francisco, Seattle, Portland, some parts of other major cities like that, guess what you're going to find? Those plant-based sections are usually really, really full, and the regular meat sections are less full. We've seen this. We've all seen the pictures of the marked down Beyond Meat on the on the internet, right? The pictures of it next to nearly empty meat shelves where the Beyond Meat is still practically full. We've all heard anecdotally that meat department guys in most of these stores are forced to sell it, that nobody wants it. I've actually talked to the meat department guy at one of my local grocery stores who says that they hardly ever sell any of that stuff, but they're required to sell it for some reason. The corporate made that decision. Probably got a good deal from Beyond Meat, or there may be some tax incentive that we are not aware of. But in general, I would say that this is to generally be good news. And actually, I am very happy that the FDA is going to regulate this, that they're going to come out and say this is what plant-based means. And we will recover that here, of course, on this channel, and I'm sure some of the other in the carnivore and keto spaces will cover that news as well by the end of 2023. There's also a farm bill that's coming, and I expect this farm bill is going to be a big giveaway to the plant-based food industry. Probably be covering that here in the coming days as well. But I'm curious, do you take it to be good news like I do, that the regulators are going to come down on this? Do you see those numbers, that 81% of people are trying to eat healthy, whatever that means? Do you take that as a good sign? Do you take it as a good sign that people are, well, kind of sort of willing to do it, but that there's no sticking power to the plant-based foods? That, according to that article, people, they try it, but they don't come back. And we saw that in the numbers, right? I mean, you see that in the actual numbers. We all covered beyond the woes of Beyond Meat and the plant-based meats. Are you surprised when looking at those numbers that there are no repeat customers for that stuff? Let me know what you think of this in the comments. And hit like and subscribe if you haven't. It does help. And sharing this in social media helps too. I'm Anthony Stine, the Practical Carnivore. Thanks for your time.